Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast. Today, we have a really meaty middle part of The Wrath of the Triple Goddess. We have some very illustrious qualified returning guests. We have a trip to Troy, a trip to Nolita. It's going to be a wild time, so stick around.
Welcome back to Seaweed Brain. I'm Erica, as always, joined by Carter. What's up, Carter?
Hi.
Our illustrious returning guests today are Robert from the Damn Meme page. Hi, Robert.
Hello.
And Emily from Monster Donut. Hi, Emily.
Hello.
This is so lovely. I think it's also important historical context for people listening next week and people listening years in the future to know that today is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Once again, Seaweed Brain is recording on Election Day, which means we've been doing this podcast for a really long time.
Yeah, this is our second presidential election recording. Isn't that wild?
I was about to say a year and then can't sleep on those local elections.
No, we never can. You, wonderful listener, are in the future. You know the results. We're in the past. We don't know them yet.
That is actually really a great point.
I really hope that the listeners will know the results. Oh my.
Oh gosh. Yeah. No, it should be a lot faster than it was in 2020. We should know at the latest by like tomorrow morning.
That's the context that we are coming to you from. And we're just going to keep that in mind as we go about recording a silly little podcast episode about a silly
we
little
might be a
children's
little
book.
bit weird today.
Weirder than normal.
The vibes for like filming today. I receive a text from Erica at like 4 a.m. my time being like, hey, so we're still good to record today? Or is like a good distraction, or are we too distracted? And I'm like, that's a great question. Good distraction.
Yeah. So we're officially distracting ourselves by talking about chapters 16 to 18 of The Wrath of the Triple Goddess. I need everybody to know that before I even finished reading this book, and I think before Robert finished reading this book, I got a text from them that said, I need to come on and guest for chapter 16. So welcome. You've been waiting for this for a long time.
I have. I read through this chapter. Well, these set of chapters, like 16 to 18, I think is really good. But 16 in general, I had something from it that really stuck out to me.
Interesting.
Was it the chapter title, Hellhounds at the Disco?
That's one of the things. Hellhounds at the Disco. Who told Rick Riordan about Panic at the Disco? I mean, it's been a band for like 20 plus years. No, like 10 plus years. Sorry. We're not that old yet.
The question holds nevertheless, though. I think it is still worth asking and thinking about.
I think Uncle Rick knows the lyrics to 9 in the Afternoon.
Out of all of them, you think he listened to the Psychedelic album?
No, I think that was like the most played pop radio hit that he would have picked up on wandering around the mall in the 2000s.
Do you not think he's like a High Hopes type of girl?
High
hopes for a living.
I don't know though, because we got Oops, I Killed You Again, which is 19. Like there's music references happening.
And Streets are saying there's another callback to So Yesterday, one of the great pop songs of history and famous famous subject of Rick's early pop cultural writing.
Yeah. Okay, wait, no, quickly though, I do want to hear what you all think is the one Panic at the Disco song Rick knows. I'm going to go with 9 in the Afternoon. Carter, you're
I'm going to go with High Hopes, for sure.
Emily?
For sure.
Is this the part where I have to admit that I live under a rock? Oh, no.
Wow, Emily's black cat just jumped into the camera.
This
okay, Emily passes
happens.
because she doesn't know any Panic at the Disco songs. Honestly, the better you are for it. Robert?
What if my headcanon is that once Rick got the confirmation that the show is going to happen, he's just blasting Victorious?
Okay. Tonight we are victorious.
Champagne
pouring over us.
Yep.
All my friends are glorious. Tonight we are victorious.
Yeah.
See, the place in my brain that is taken up by Panic at the Disco lyrics, Emily's brain is full of like useful knowledge about the classics to host a Percy Jackson podcast.
Actually, it's full of Lana Del Rey lyrics, Eric.
Ooh.
Listen, two sides of the same coin. We were all busy doing something in 2011.
Inside of you are two wolves.
Say it with me. One is gay. The other one's gay. You are gay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where did we last leave off, Carter?
This is an excellent question. We last left off in Astoria with Hecuba, who was terrorizing Greek food establishments.
But not doing any actual violence because that would be bad.
Yeah, she's not committing ethnic hate crimes. She is instead trying to get people to understand her personal trauma from the Trojan War.
She might also
And-
be committing ethnic hate crimes, though. Jury
They
is
may
honestly
be
out.
hate
Just a little
crimes,
bit.
but there's no violence. She's trying to get specifically ethnically Greek people in Astoria, Queens, to like deeply have to have like a sensory experience where they're in her POV watching Troy be destroyed by the Greeks during the Trojan War. At the end of that whole experience, it seems like we're getting through to her, and it also seems like we're about to trap her by like getting the leash on. And at the moment we do so, she, because she's a hellhound, starts shadow traveling us out. And that is where we open, is with Percy strapped onto Hecuba, shadow traveling away, while also holding Nope, the small hellhound puppy that we met a few chapters ago. And we're just flying through the the sea of all shadows united.
Mhm.
Robert, in your no context spoilers for this book, I distinctly remember a screen grab from the episode of SpongeBob where they are traveling through the various like levels of the Flying Dutchman, and they're going through like the perfume shop and all of these different things. And at first I was like, interesting, because I hadn't read the book yet, and now
Yeah.
I completely understand. Was it a reference to the scene?
Yeah, I think the perfume shop was more a reference to
The actual perfume shop?
the actual perfume shop. But you know what? There's always room for interpretation. I think the literal scene I had of a no context spoiler for this was just a picture of a woman being dragged like in the air by her dog who's running,
Mm.
and she's like holding onto the end of the leash. No context spoilers are fun.
I was really seeing in my mind a sort of like cartoon montage of two of the characters like running in place. Meanwhile, the background is constantly
Mm.
changing to different locales.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
That's just like
Interesting.
the Flintstones effect.
Yeah.
Many of
Yes.
the classics, yeah. Like this, I think the effect that you're describing is primarily like a children's, like Sunday morning cartoon type of situation where it is like maximum cheapness, run cycle on
Mhm.
like green screen, effectively.
Mhm.
Phineas and Ferb really believed in this technique as well.
Yes,
I really
exactly.
enjoyed the detail of Nope, like the pee-prone puppy in his hands, though. It just felt so... Just like imagining Percy Jackson like juggling a puppy and just also being like, because I was picturing like Realm of Nyx almost, because I think he referenced that where he was like, oh, now that I've seen the horrors, I can like see more of them. But also I'm like just picturing a stoic Percy like basically on water skis, just like holding the puppy.
I think on water skis is roughly what I had in mind as well. Yeah.
Ah, water skis.
I think he
Mhm.
says, doesn't he say water skiing at some point in the book, in the chapter?
Yes.
There's a gif I remember that's from this anime of someone reading a book while water skiing, holding on with one hand, and that's sort of what I was picturing, except instead of a book, it's not as chill and just Percy holding this puppy.
Yeah, who's like actively peeing
Yes,
as the
it's
pee
actively
flies
peeing.
and washes back into his
Or
face.
it's like the Parks and Rec, you know, with when they're on the ice. It's like
Oh,
Yes.
it's like the dog is
The
peeing.
dog is peeing. The dog is now peeing.
yeah.
That is also the Nick Offerman line reading was also immediately what I thought of when we first
I feel
met.
like I
Nope.
could very much see Nick Offerman at some point playing like very grown up Percy, actually. I feel like the
Honestly,
vibes
yeah.
are there.
I think that's kind of where we're going in these chapters. High key is to that.
We do need to speak about that.
Well, who's the corresponding Annabeth though? That who are we casting as Annabeth in that?
Does that mean it's
AU?
Megan Mullally?
Is it not Megan Mullally?
Hmm.
Well, okay.
It doesn't
we're
fully
shadow
track.
traveling.
Much to
We're we have the strong mental image of what's happening. We find out that Percy and Nico have apparently shadow traveled together to go Christmas shopping in Florence.
Does that sound like a tee up for a holiday short story collection, or does that sound like a tee up for a
No,
holiday
that
short
already
story
happened.
collection?
Wait, do you not know about this?
No.
That exists. It's in Italian. I
Wait,
think.
what?
I was gonna ask you if you knew about this. I only know about
Like
this
it's a fan
because-
fiction?
No, like
Like
Rick
Rick
wrote.
didn't write it in Italian.
Yes, he did.
No,
I think
remember
he
he
did.
learned Italian so he could read Dante's Inferno. Do you not remember this?
And it's crucial lore for Rick Riordan.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm googling.
No, we're looking this up right now.
Actually, let me text Phoebe. That's gonna be fast.
I feel like this is something I vaguely remember.
No, I haven't read it, to be clear. That's like one of the few things we haven't gotten to yet. But
Oh my God. Un Natale mezzo sangue. Rick Riordan, December 18th, 2020, in Italian. It's a short story. that was written in Italian, and it's on rickriordan.com. What? This
So
would
it's
have been
not
published.
published even. It's like somewhere between like a fan fiction blog post and
But the
like,
link
'cause,
is
like, if you go-
unavailable. I just clicked on the link and it's unavailable.
I think they took some down. I remember I was explaining We Eat Nachos After the War to somebody else, and they couldn't find it, but someone had uploaded onto Wattpad. So I have high hopes if you search for it on Wattpad, you'll find it.
It'll be around.
Okay, I
Yeah.
did find the Wattpad link. Maybe it's very short. We should probably read it and discuss it at the very beginning of next episode.
So I'm surprised you don't know about this. That's crazy.
This would have come out when we were 6 months into doing the podcast. December 2020.
Wait, okay, what was Trials of Apollo finished then?
No, the last
No,
Trials book came
that
out in
was-
2021.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is wild. Huh. See, thank God we have Emily here.
I'm not even the real historian. That's Phoebe. I only know this exists because Phoebe frequently brings it up because she thinks it's really funny that it exists.
It is
In
really funny that it
Italian.
exists. Like, do you think
In
this was for
Italian.
a class project or something?
I don't know. I think, well, didn't he give like a lecture in Italian when he went to Rome that one time? Like, that was all sort of part of that era.
Yeah. The Italian era. We're in the Celtic era now, right?
Yeah. I
The
think
Gaelic
so.
era. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
I think another important thing we find out here, aside from that this actually happened and also exists, is that Percy believes Nico and Mrs. O'Leary have been shielding him from the worst effects of shadow travel thus far, which I think is a
Mhm.
likely story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about poor little baby Nico, man. Like, he's 12 in The Last Olympian?
Yeah. Poor 12-year-old Nico just trying to shield Percy from the worst effects of his powers. No, because he probably feels like guilt about how dark it is, and he doesn't want Percy to feel that darkness. Ooh. Well,
Yeah.
we travel through a German nightclub and the lingerie department of a department store.
I was very confused by both of those choices. And if we don't get, like, we're going to need, these better be Chekhov's German nightclub and lingerie department of an unnamed department store. Because if they're not, and I'm assuming that they're not, but why?
I wish they were switched, you got to get the right fit. And then,
And then go to the nightclub.
And then go to the nightclub.
Mhm.
I like that they're completely random because the shadows of the world are connected like a great ocean, Carter. You never know where you're going to end up.
I guess that's the idea that the German club is a really random place, which is of course untrue. The German club is a very specific place that is like
to some people, apparently, Grover.
I know that. Okay, I guess that's maybe it's all worth it to tee up the Grover one. Like Grover knows German nightclubs by name reveal, which is maybe worth it.
The Grover wants to go to the German nightclubs in his old wedding dress from the Sea of Monsters reveal.
I guess we should just move past this. There's no point in
it's not
digging in
Chekhov's
further.
lingerie section, unfortunately.
It's not Chekhov's lingerie section.
I'm gonna say, you know what? I should make a shirt that has like Chekhov's so-and-so from every one of these things in the book, and they're all crossed out until we get to Chekhov's ghost child on bike with ghost glasses, and that's the only one that is truly fires.
Are they not
anyone buy
Chekhov's
that
torches?
shirt?
Like they have to be Chekhov's torches also.
Oh, Chekhov's Hecate's cross
Chekhov's
torches.
Hecate's cross
He's
torches and
Chekhov's
ghost child
Hecate's last
with the
resort
glasses
cross
on the bike.
torches. Okay, great.
Chekhov's,
I'll get on Canva. Anyway, we end up in Troy, which is the reason that Emily wanted to be here today.
Yeah, first of all, my biggest takeaway from this scene was Percy S. Jackson, go to a museum right now and tell someone the coordinates, please.
Wait, okay. I was also wondering about this. Can you give us more detail? It looks like Google Maps has a location for the ruins of Troy that is not in eyesight of the ocean, but they're like fake, right?
Okay. Okay, so basically there is a site that you can look up on UNESCO that is labeled as Troy, that's in Turkey off the coast, and it matches the description. I'd have to double check the exact coordinates and how close it is to the sea and stuff, but topographical changes aren't uncommon, and changes in sea levels and stuff or whatever can affect it. Also, as much as the Iliad, as much as people would love the Iliad and the Odyssey to be historical accounts, they are not. They're wonderful stories, and they tell us a lot about the ancient world, but they're not necessarily accurate. But the thing is, the guy that first excavated Troy thought they were. And that's kind of the whole problem with the site that it's currently there. Basically, this guy named Heinrich Schliemann, who made he's German. He basically was sort of the beginning of this wave of a bunch of rich European, like German, French, and British, often gentlemen, people who could basically afford to fund their own excavations in the ancient world because they'd grown up on classics and the Iliad and the Odyssey and were obsessed with it because they're great stories. And so they kind of got it into their heads like, I'm going to Greece and I'm going to find the Iliad. And some of them actually went and did so. And there's a few archaeological sites in Greece that unfortunately were kind of guinea pigs of really early archaeological practices and of a lot of rich men thinking to themselves, yes, of course, I know exactly what I'm doing. Troy is obviously the beginning of history, so I'm going to find this hill that roughly matches the description of what I'm looking for, that somebody else told me about, but I'm not going to credit him in my paper. Why would I do that? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
No. I'm going to go to Greece. I'm going to go to this hill. And I'm going to dynamite down to the first layer of this archaeological site because obviously the Trojan War was the dawn of time, which is exactly what Heinrich Schliemann did, which is really fun and cool because he dynamited down to a site that's like a good 2,000 to 3,000 years older than Troy would have been. So if he did find it, there's a question mark there. We're not 100% sure because we don't even know if the Trojan War actually happened. I like to believe that there's strong cultural memories of these kinds of events. So I do think there was definitely a war at some point that did survive in the stories in that way. But what is kind of cool is the site he found does have evidence of like a great destruction of a city, which is pretty cool, and like pretty big city walls. So parts of it match up. But unfortunately, I kind of hope that it's not Troy because of the dynamite situation. Because that basically means he would have destroyed a lot of what the actual Troy and the archaeological site would have been. He was also just like not a good dude. Like when he was doing this whole thing, he like found a 17-year-old Greek woman and married her, and it's like a whole.
Ooh.
When he was like in his 40s. Yeah, it's super cool. And like there's a really famous photo actually where he like found all of these jewels and stuff. And he'd be like, he called it the treachery of Priam, even though we now date like thousands of years before Troy would have happened. And he like put them all over his young Greek wife and took a photo of it. I think it's on the Wikipedia page.
Oh my.
But yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of like really interesting history and stuff there. That's super cool. But it's one of those things where on the one hand, his was one of the first projects and first archaeological sites that sort of began a new phase of excavation in the classical world. So it's a sort of like, okay, that's cool he did that and kind of like started people wanting to get interested in excavation, but also
yeah,
had to be this guy doing that, which kind of sucks. And a similar thing happened in Crete at Knossos with Sir Arthur Evans, although his main crime was trying to reconstruct it with concrete that he poured over the real ruins.
This is exactly the kind of thing that if Annabeth was here in this moment, she would have been like, oh my God, write down the freaking coordinates. But Percy has no idea about any of this, so he didn't think about it.
He's just like, there's some hills. I heard nothing about dynamite. I'm like, Percy, come on. Is this the real...
But also, based on what you're saying, it sounds like it is impossible that this is because, like, it would like the real site is probably it either got blown up by dynamite or it's underground somewhere and hasn't been excavated successfully, right?
Well, it has been excavated. So there is, if you look it up on the like UNESCO site and everything, like you can see there's pictures of the site, and it does like check out and look like kind of a Mycenaean type situation to the best of my knowledge. I mean, I'm not an actual expert in archaeology. I just have a bachelor's degree, but it was interesting because I think Percy says like, oh, I recognize it even though it's like a lot has changed. And so part of me was like, wait, does this mean he sees the ruins, or does this mean it's like just like he sees the like vista, the countryside? Like it made me curious because I remembered in Heroes of Olympus, one of the things that really bothered me about Blood of Olympus is they keep going to these archaeological sites and all the characters are like, it's just rocks.
I do feel like what he's describing is a little confusing because like he's describing a wall that's above ground. So it probably is the UNESCO site. It probably is like, based on what you're saying, this site that people recognize or people like ascribe to Troy, but is maybe not based on what is known about the archaeological record. However, from what I can tell based on the internet, his description also doesn't totally hang together of what that site looks
No,
like, because
that's
he's
what I'm
very vividly
saying.
describing the ocean,
Yeah.
which is not that close to this site. Like, I don't know. Maybe he's in a separate third place that
Maybe.
is
Liminal space. Somewhere in the
And
oceanic shadows of the world.
maybe we live in an alternate universe where Heinrich Schliemann never excavated Troy. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe someone stopped that and they were like, no, please put that dynamite down, sir.
Yeah.
If I had a nickel for every time Rick Riordan misjudged the distance between a site of importance and the nearest body of water, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
What's the other one?
The St. Louis Arch.
Oh, good one, Robert. That was a good one. Even though you had to explain it to me.
In like the Iliad, though, there are like ground battles. Like it's not like on the beach, So
yeah.
Maybe the beach has really crept up because of climate change. You know,
Maybe.
maybe the water.
All of the images from the site very clearly like are such that like you can't see like a wave from the top of this hill. It really looks like. But maybe Percy is just so attuned to it that like when it's within 100 miles, he
might as well
like
be the
in his
beach.
spirit is
His
like,
job is beach.
this is the ocean. I feel it within me. Yeah.
I do love the moment he picks up the stone though and is like, oh man, this could have been like a slingshot. And I was like, yeah, that's the stuff. That's like the coolest part about. I don't know. I just love like tactile like evidence of things, because that is one of the really cool things about like the ancient world is the stuff that has been left behind. And just being able to be like, oh wow, that's like someone built that wall like 4,000 years ago and I'm touching it.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah,
but maybe that's just me and I just like walls.
I think that's being a history buff. Like, I think that's being someone who has a strong interest in ancient civilizations.
Maybe.
Walls. Yeah.
Walls.
Yeah. Remember those walls are built?
Baby. They are in fact tumbling down because Percy is having a conversation with Hecuba about what has transpired here and trying to reason with her, trying to relate her situation to his situation, and for the first time acknowledging what we have kind of suspected maybe is on his mind about how he's getting a new sibling and his like at-home family dynamic is changing at the same time that his found family friend group dynamic is changing. And he too has lost a lot of people in life, but it does not serve to think about the people he's lost. He has to instead like care for the people who are still around, which I think is valid advice, like, and the only thing he really can offer at this moment. But it's hard to compare their situations.
I don't think he's directly comparing them. I think it's an empathy window that he's opening.
There you go.
He's trying to be like, I have to riff, I have to be vulnerable. This is what I have going on, and the lesson for us all in life is to just keep it pushing.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, Wilder person, because he doesn't usually open up to people that much. Usually, people open up to him.
Yes. And usually the approach is more based on asking lots of questions and letting them kind of spin out or talk themselves into
Right, but this is
certain
a
conclusion.
dog.
But Hecuba doesn't talk. This whole time she is just staring.
I don't know about y'all.
Not me forgetting dogs don't talk for a second.
Hecuba didn't eat alphabet soup and is suddenly able to speak like Martha, unfortunately. For a deep cup reference for the people our age.
Dog with a blog.
Dog with a blog. Oh, geez. But there is definitely... I don't know about y'all, but like you can tell a lot about what a dog is thinking based on how they look. They have many different ways to like move their eyes around to convey emotion.
This is so true to life of Percy being alone with this dog, and he normally doesn't open up about his feelings, but it's just him and this dog. So he's just going to really talk to this dog. And this dog is going to be the one living creature who hears all of his inner thoughts.
I think it's interesting it's Hecuba too, because her story is so like about being trapped in like a stage of very visceral emotion. Like that's what he sort of sees. It's like she actually has sort of two myths of turning into a dog. Very similar, but they're both like completely tied to her grief over like losing her whole family, losing her home, and all of these emotions. And it's like this idea that like basically you are in such a feral state of grief that you literally transform is sort of like the basis of her story. So yeah, it's interesting that that's like, maybe that's the connection. Maybe she embodies that emotion so much that Percy can kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it invites Percy to also kind of sit in those feelings.
He does say, quote, "You could scare all the Greeks you want. It won't heal the grief. It's just chucking more wood into the fire. I think it's better to find your pack and protect it." I like that this is a direct statement about Percy Jackson's life motto and how he chooses to move through the world, that there's only so much you can do. And so the best thing to do is to take care of the people around you, which absolutely aligns with his fatal flaw of always putting the lives of his friends and his loved ones ahead of his own and of the fate of the world. That fits together really nicely. But I also found myself feeling, reading this quote, that this is such a big statement that I almost wish wasn't like halfway through this book, that I wish we could have an entire Percy narrated book focused on this idea of grief, because we have had to kind of push through so many losses in the Riordanverse, including what takes place after this book with the loss of Jason. It would be cool to have Percy talk about his grief, particularly like if the loss of Jason like triggered kind of all of it coming back to him while he's in college and realizing just how much he has lost, how much he's gone through. I know I did just watch WandaVision, and so I'm obviously really stuck in ruminating about like how we can make art about processing grief. But it's just such a big, gigantic topic that could have so much room to be explored from Percy's perspective.
Absolutely. I think Rick comes at it, he's coming at it from a subtle angle. Like, listen, this is still a children's book series at the end of the day, despite what us people in our 20s would like to believe. But I think, listen, especially comparing to how Percy, the only mention of Percy's grief for Jason we get at the end of Tower of Nero is, do we all know the ending of Tower of Nero?
If you haven't read the end of Tower of Nero, skip ahead.
It's not even a huge spoiler. It's just that there's a moment where Apollo and Percy are talking about the death of Jason and how his face like darkens and he's like, yeah, it happened without any of us being able to like get into contact with it. I think who told him? It was Leo who told him? Or Leo? No, because he's in the Camp Jupiter area. So like everyone in Camp Jupiter told him. So I think that's also subtle because it's the end of the book. You know, I think in the same vein how you kind of have a problem with the fact that the talk of grief is here in the middle of this book. That's at the end of that book. We get to know maybe like 3 lines of how Percy's dealing with Jason's death.
I know we've all talked about the possibility of Dark Percy before, but that could be a great way to segue into Dark Evil Percy for one book while he is doing chaos magic to process his grief over the loss of Jason and the loss of every single freaking Michael Yu. Let's take it back. There's been many losses. We need to hear more about Bianca.
Phoebe and I did have a whole... one of the things we've talked a lot about is how like the labyrinth kind of is a place where people process grief. Bring it back.
Like his own Minos journey.
Yes.
I think this is right. And I think there's something about his emotional journey where it almost feels like the book is setting up parallel tracks for him. One of them is this story about transition from, you know, this like high octane hero life with certain relationships and then trying to move out of that into a slower paced thing with like a different core like relational dynamic where he's living in a different place, not with his family, like forming new relationships in college, etc. That seems like one track. And then there's simultaneously this thing that this book is doing where Percy's reactions all generally seem to be much less managed and more angry than we've ever seen before. And I don't feel like these two threads are necessarily that closely woven together in the way that the book is written. I would like to see that a little bit more. And this seems like an opportunity that we could have used to tie these things together more directly. And like Dark Percy as an idea would also, I think, feed into this idea of like trying to marry these threads together a little more directly, or to give time to juxtapose these things, as opposed to, it seems like, more toggling between like emotional modes.
Like he has all of this pent up anger and frustration and also like PTSD from being in war his whole life, that now that his life is calmer, he has nowhere to put all of that anger.
Mhm.
I
Is
think
that what
that's
you're saying?
maybe an appropriate read. I mostly feel like we just don't have that much insight into it. It just seems like he is like reacting a lot more extremely and angrily to things that in the past he would have been chiller about because the level of danger is more normal, or because there are too many other things and he's too emotionally exhausted to muster that level of reaction. This discussion felt like very fast, and like we were like picking an idea from Percy's life to think about for this chapter, and not necessarily saying that this whole book is going to be built around this idea and that this theme is going to be like in many ways this is like an act break type of thing. Like this is the end roughly of act 1, act 2 of the book. Seems like maybe a 4-act structure in which this is the end of act 2 of 4.
Yeah, act 3 is Gale.
Act 3 is Gale, and act 4
is the
is
school.
final thing.
Yeah, I could see this as like a midpoint turn. Yeah,
but then like given that, it doesn't feel like the emotional stuff that we're doing in this chapter feels, I think, relatively disconnected from the emotional stuff we're doing in a lot of the other chapters, for like the amount of weight it has and for the way that it's closing a whole story.
I agree, because it's not like the whole book is about grief. It's about the choices of our, like the choices and versions of our past, which is a really broad idea. So like grief is one of the versions of that, of the grief of the things you don't have control over.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the things I like. One of the connections I made though in this chapter specifically, though, for me was I was thinking a lot about physical place as a theme in this book. And because there's a lot of like, because I was sitting here like, why do they like, out of all of the times in the Percy Jackson series, why do we go to Troy now?
Yeah.
Like, if you could theoretically travel it, like there's plenty of times and places they could have gone before, or in Trials, well, maybe not in Trials Paula, but and to me it's interesting though, like the Hecuba situation, because her in the Iliad and her in her mythology and stories, like she's one of the main characters of a really famous play called Trojan Woman. Basically, like a lot of her story is, it's like she's grieving her family that she's lost, but she's also grieving her home, and it's the tying together of those two things of like Troy is not just home, but it's also all of the people. And I feel like we get that a little bit in this book. And like, has Chiron made his cameo yet?
Yes.
Like with the Chiron situation, the way Percy reacts to Chiron, where he just gets so disoriented seeing like a person in the place, in the context he knew them in before. Like that's sort of how I think about, like I connect them together in my head, where it's like the grieving of the person you were while you were living in these places, and like also moving on, like thinking about going off to college to become a different person.
I like that a lot, that he's like, a lot of this book is like celebrating and mourning the last moments that the three of them have together in New York City before they physically separate. Yeah,
because it's just a lot. I mean, in this part, and we'll like later on, there's a lot about like the physical places. That I won't spoil. But.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Emily. That's a beautiful reading.
That's sort of what Troy like is. Like even talking about like, I don't know, I'm just an Iliad nerd, but like Troy itself, like in what I was sort of explaining before, is like such a symbolic place of so many things, that so many people have so many, not just the characters in the Iliad, but like people like Heinrich Schliemann, or like everybody else. It's like such a touchstone culturally of this like Greco-Roman world, and means so many different things to different people. Like, I don't know, I find it like kind of interesting and cool that this is the place and context it comes up in this series.
Robert, you also wanted to say some stuff about chapter 16. Have we touched on it yet?
We have. For me, this was probably my favorite chapter. I'm really trying to, it's either between this or like the second to last chapter. Because I did enjoy this talk. Percy starts off the whole conversation being like, so yeah, my mom's gonna have a kid. That's great news. I'm a demigod. I've been a only child my whole life. Demigods, you know how it is. And he's just like spilling his life story and all these experiences and trying to relate to Hecuba, just to be like, listen, I know your situation is not good for a multitude of reasons, but that's, in a way, Percy just kind of does go, that's life. You gotta take the bad with the good. And I guess he says it in a way that Hecuba really likes because she agrees to go back to New York with him, but they come to an understanding because Hecuba is like putting her paw on the leash, and Percy's like, yep, you're right, no leash. When Hecate comes back, I will ask her to give you more freedom.
Yeah. How did we feel about that, everyone?
I didn't love that. I'm not gonna lie.
I was not.
I just like seeing her in, because here's the thing, right? Like I said, there's multiple myths of Hecuba turning into a dog. One of them is she just throws herself off a tower, which is like the way more common one. And the one we saw is of her literally in chains. So I was like, I don't know about seeing her literally in chains like 2 chapters ago and then being like, let me put these chains back on you.
Yeah.
Or being like, I will put in a good word for you. I feel like if for Percy to have a character arc, like his whole first character arc ended with him saying, I'm going to advocate for the right changes and I'm going to try to hold people to account and I'm going to hope that this works out. And then we've had many books of observing the follow-up from that. And I think coming to different conclusions about what it means to follow through on things, like what power will concede with the different levels of pressure and fight and relationships to it and such. And it's not just that it was unsatisfying in terms of Percy doing what I would personally prefer him to do. It feels strange temporally for this character, knowing what we know about his history, to not say something like, okay, come back with me and like you, me, and Gail are gonna sit and we're gonna chit chat and we're gonna bring a counter proposal to the table to Hecate about how we are going to do this family structure right.
Yeah.
Or Percy being like, you want to leave? Let's leave. Let's go. You know,
Yes.
like we're gonna strategize on how I don't die, but if you want to leave,
Yeah.
we should leave. You know?
I think the idea is that Percy sensed that she didn't want to leave. Because he does let them off the leash, right? Like he says, it might have been a huge mistake, but I felt like it was the right thing to do to let them go.
There's some concessions, but the energy still feels like Jurassic Park or something. Like the letting off the leash is a symbolic show of trust, but isn't about fundamentally
altering
trying to
the structure,
move towards a different relationship. Yeah. Or like idea about like who's supposed to be in a leash and who's not supposed to be in a leash. Like I think he's respects Hecuba more as a person, but what we have at this point is him saying like, we're gonna all do our best moving forward with what we have.
It's something.
It fits with the idea that what happened in the past, and all you can do now is protect your pack. And it just so happens to be that Hecuba's pack is Hecate and Gale, which works if you don't think of Hecate as her abuser.
I think you have to like strongly try to use like a parent metaphor on this, where like Hecate is maybe like a mom who made a lot of mistakes, but ultimately has best interests at heart and will be maybe receptive to a good conversation about how we want to do things moving forward. But I don't know. What we have instead is a human who's a pet.
Yeah,
that's a sentence for the
doing
ages.
our best with a very awkward situation from antiquity.
Yeah, I don't feel like Hecate is like abusive towards Hecuba. Like,
no.
It seems like an act of mercy to turn her into a dog in the mythology, at least.
Yeah, you have to believe it's an act of mercy in order to buy.
They really try to paint it as an act of mercy in this book.
Yeah,
I think,
later on,
way it's phrased.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that can be an act of mercy, but I think we still, like, regardless of whether that is good, I think we still have the ongoing question of, like, why is Hecuba locked in? Like, why is she chained if she is, like, a person who we have a mutually beneficial relationship with? And I feel like that's a question that we're going to kind of interrogate, but I was surprised by the level of interrogation we had at this point, in the sense that I thought it would be higher.
Yeah, and how do we feel about connecting that with the Thalia situation too? So like, we do the best we can.
Yeah, Percy being like, gods are crazy. Like, gods are just doing some whack stuff.
Hellhounds at the disco, am I right?
Hey.
Wow. I have a friend whose dad once turned her into a tree. Stupid pine cone face.
Oh my god.
I'm not gonna lie, to me that felt like a one-line reminder that we needed to be reminded for Talia's appearance in season 2.
Rick writes sins, not tragedy.
Ooh, I like that. Hey, Emily,
Ooh.
you
Did
do
I
know
just
things.
Google to make sure? Yes.
Oh,
Hey, many people would not know the title of that song, to be honest.
No,
Yeah.
I had to Google that it was a Panic at the Disco.
what if that was the title of this episode? Rick writes Sins, Not Tragedies.
I'll do it. I'll make it the title of this episode just for you.
That's incredible.
Does he
Uh,
leash her?
No,
No,
she
not at
doesn't.
the
No,
end.
but I
doesn't
think
leash
he does
her.
put the collar back on her, doesn't he? Am I making that up?
So maybe we think about the collar as a friendship bracelet and not as chains in
Yeah.
order to
to
get back
keep
home.
the status quo of Percy being the quote unquote good guy.
Yeah, I'll accept the leash choice being the real choice. I'll accept that as being
Yeah.
the right. Okay.
Hey, Percabeth podcast. Look, it's a Percabeth moment.
Yeah. When they get back, Annabeth kisses him on the forehead, and Percy notes that she particularly smells and sniffs the scent of his forehead. And that to me is so real, so true love. I don't know if you guys sniff your friends' heads, but I do, and you should, because people often talk about like the smell of a baby's head. You know, you've
Yeah.
heard this, right? Like if you sniff the head of your baby, it's like the greatest thing in the world. I just
I
recently
heard Erica specifically comparing the heads of one of our mutual friends to a baby.
did she tell you about this? I just
I
saw.
was there. You did this when we were in. Oh, is this Alex? So I'm talking about Sammy. You told Sammy when we were all in San Francisco.
It's
that
happened
her
multiple
head smelled
times.
like a baby.
It's happened multiple times in the past couple months. You have to kiss your friends on the scalp and smell the top of their head. Trust me, you won't regret it. It will smell like love in its truest form. You have to. That's all. End of TED
And
Talk.
with that, I think that's the end of chapter 16. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with chapter 17. All right, we're back. It's chapter 17.
Are we going to make it through 2 chapters?
I think we are.
Okay.
Chapter 18 is
I have
fast,
nothing to
short.
say about chapter 17.
Yeah, there's only a couple things that we really need to like get into in these 2 chapters, so we'll hit them.
Yeah. God, you know what I love in a Rick Riordan book? Character using an overpowered power once and once only, because if they ever do it again, they'll die. My
Are you talking about
favorite
the pan
gender.
scream?
It's not, well, I guess he only did that once as well. It was kind of OP, but like there's no reason why he hasn't done that yet. That's just
Yeah.
kind of, I think, an exercise left to the reader. But okay, Grover gets grounded as the chapter. We begin by just kind of reestablishing that we had a hard night, but the Hecubop part of the story is
God
closed.
damn it.
Her arc is resolved. She has a nice relationship with Nope. We're chill there.
Are you
We're just chatting, strategizing. Percy got a bacon, egg, and cheese made for him by Annabeth because we have to reset the scene and remind us that we're in New York.
New York, baby?
And that Annabeth is currently playing the role of mom in this book.
Yeah, I was a little like, oh, cooking? Really? Okay. But you know, people have to eat. People should cook. That I'm not digging.
Annabeth said,
cooking
"I
as an
can
activity."
cook too." On top of the rest,
She's in her experimental food phase. You know, she's trying things. She's learning.
Experimental food being a bacon, egg, and cheese.
No, I just mean like the cooking part. You know, we see
Yeah,
her,
yeah.
messing with stuff earlier, where she's like, "Let's try some weird things."
The big reveal of the section is one that we alluded to earlier, which is that Grover has specific Berlin nightclubs that he is trying to get into, and that he says specifically he wants to do so in the wedding dress outfit from the Sea of Monsters. That's
all I
in
have
full
to
quotes.
say
Slay.
is that Grover of the Lightning Thief would never have said something like this, and that Grover is different and better now.
Grover just wants to go to a club and do, I don't know if we would define it as drag, cross-dressing, whatever it is he wants to do. Let him explore whatever he wants to do. at
Wedding
the club.
dress is giving like drag. That's not
Yeah.
like that's not him saying like I want to be one of the girls. Like you a wedding dress in the club is a choice. That is you saying I am performative. This is a costume. You are going to look at me.
And Juniper would do his makeup, you know?
Absolutely.
And I could see them
She'd be the
going
bouquet.
together and having a great time. She would be the bouquet.
She would be the Emily, please.
I like this journey for Grover. I do feel like if he's going to go clubbing, it is going to be to a quote unquote weird one, you know. And we can backfill what that says about the rest of his life and his other interests and
I mean, he's
beliefs.
kind of like in Chalice of the Gods. He's in his emo era a little bit. Because here's my thing. I was talking about this in Chalice of the Gods. He, as we have to remember, he is aging at half the speed of Percy and Annabeth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think he's
Yeah.
still in his angsty teen phase.
Yeah, that sounds right. Grover's not too old for the club.
No.
And he should
Because
go.
if things keep aging correctly, I think Grover is like 28 in real time. So that means he's like 14, 15 in his
Yeah.
head. Shout out to, I think Rick forgot that Grover was a vegetarian, because there's a moment where he says that they finished breakfast, and by finished breakfast he means Grover just ate everything that was left. And I'm like, Percy, you had a bacon, egg, and cheese. There is
That's
bacon
funny.
on
I
a
feel
bacon,
like
was
egg, and
thinking, like,
maybe
cheese.
he ate-
Percy just finished the middle and Grover ate the like the wrapper, right?
Oh, I
Or
was
like,
thinking that Grover ate like the pan and the fork and the plate
yeah,
and the napkins.
yeah. Anyway, okay, Grover's on a journey. We love that for him. You know, certain type of person does wedding dress drag specifically, and I see that journey for him. But today is just going to be a Percy Grover duo moment because Annabeth still wants to go to school.
Yeah.
So the two of them are going to be alone together working on the Gale search. Annabeth refers to Grover as Mr. Protector before she leaves.
Could be cute, could be shady. I think maybe a little bit of both.
Mm.
I was like, okay, we do need to have the callback. We're reestablishing the frame of the relationship. Like we're remembering what Percy and Grover were first like when they first got to know each other.
But also calling him the protector when all he's done in this book is mess things up. I think it's a little bit shady.
You thought it was shade? I was like, she's trying to extend something. She's trying to reach back out. She's trying to remind everybody about where we started.
That's what I was thinking, especially because I just watched episode 3 again for a thing I'm doing, and there is that scene where Percy's like, he's my protector, and then Annabeth's like, he was my protector first. So I think maybe sort of in that same vein.
Yes, I think it's meant to be sweet, but I think the way it comes off is a little bit, okay, let's get you to bed, Grandpa. Like, back in the day when you were our protector, are you really protecting us anymore? But I'm trying to be nice, but it's coming across as condescending.
Controversial.
I didn't read it that way, but Erica's convinced me. If Annabeth's shady, that's the shade. That's Annabeth.
Yeah.
That would be the
Annabeth
kind of
has to
shade
be
she
a
would deliver
master.
is occupation related.
Yeah. So I completely forgot that the library in Hecate's place is called the Room of Dangerous Knowledge, which it's giving the restricted section. I'm sorry.
Yep, full of tomes and whatnot. And it's also shaped like a trident, which is a juicy little detail I loved, because it's a trident because of Hecate and having like crossroads and three choices.
Do we think it's shaped like a trident, or that it's in fact shaped as 3 torches that are crossed?
I think it's more 3 torches, but Percy's brain immediately goes to like, 3.
I found that comment a little ethnocentric, but
yeah.
But we'll allow it, I think.
Well, I think it could be that he interprets it as a trident because that is what comes to mind first.
Yeah.
Or I like the idea that it actually is a trident, but it is not a trident. Like, he's perceiving it as a trident, but in reality, it's the trident shaped warped into something different and scary because he feels that Hecate warps his reality into different and scary things. And he's in an uncomfortable, unfamiliar territory. Either way, it's a cute detail.
I also want to call back a little bit to the previous book you were looking at before you started looking at this, the Kane Chronicles, that chapter where they're in the big library looking up information. This sort of reminded me of that. And at the end, they do find out sort of the information that they're looking for. Mainly, again, it's kind of giving Harry Potter a little bit because it's Percy looking at a bunch of Annabeth notes and figuring out what Annabeth figured out.
Yes. We've been here before.
Anyway, we're in the library. There's a bunch of books about magic. We are more interested, as Percy says, though, not in the books, but in the things, in the trinkets.
In the shiny objects.
Yeah.
ADHD at large.
Through the collection here, and we have a lot of memorabilia from Hecate's School for Witches. Some interesting stuff. There's a lot of vision aid implements that we find here that do not appear to have an obvious explanation. We find a lot of recruitment pamphlets that are specifically dated from the early 20th century. And
1913, 1914.
1913 to 1914, which, that was certainly a time. Find these glasses. The glasses have the initials SEJ on them, and they create a flashback to the mysterious bicycle child, the ghost
child on the bike with ghost glasses.
Yes.
Yeah.
People who've read ahead know what the initials are. I completely forgot. It completely glossed over me, mainly because I kind of
Wait,
have
I feel like
dyslexia.
don't
So if
let
you
you
give
gloss
me,
over it. They hold you there and they're like,
No,
Percy's like,
no.
I recognize these initials.
I also, yeah, I recognize these initials. Here's the thing. I have slight dyslexia. So if you read out letters to me, my brain will automatically scramble them and I'll be like, oh, this means nothing.
That's fair.
To me, this was the moment where I read in this book where I thought to myself, SEJ, I can figure that out. I am smarter than a 5th grader. I got the twist in this book written for 8-year-olds because I'm a genius.
You ate that, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Got him.
But Percy's like, oh, SEJ. Oh, well, there's other things going on right now.
Yeah, he literally is like, not today.
I have more important things to worry about.
Yeah. I also want to say that in Annabeth's notes here in the library, in the restriction section, about it picks up the basic things that Annabeth picked up about Gale from antiquity, that like she made Hecate mad and that she was gassy. And I thought to myself, okay, so it actually is written somewhere in antiquity that Gale was super gassy before she got turned into a polecat. And so I tried to look it up, and I want Emily to share whatever knowledge she has. But apparently, yes, like Gale was cited as being, I guess the translation word from the on the characteristics of animals is incontinent, which could be interpreted in different ways.
Incontinent means, yeah, you can't control the flow. It like appears sometimes when you would not like it to. But there's some correlation. I think, you know, observers casually might not distinguish the two.
Yeah, I actually had to look this up because I did not know this story. I thought when I was reading this book, I was like, oh, this is just, he made this up.
I thought he made it up too. I thought in the book tour when they were doing that whole pre-filmed sketch of Gale and the townspeople she terrorized being interviewed to tell us about the story of Gale, I thought that was because Gale was not a real thing.
No, it turns out
As
she
it turns out. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked it up and I was like, oh, crazy. Basically, yeah, I think it's like the idea is there's okay, so interesting context. Actually, has anyone read Circe?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know how in Circe there's like that whole paragraph towards the beginning where she's explaining like pharmakis, like the Greek word, it means like mystical transforming drugs. So that's like basically taken straight out of a lecture one of my professors gave at one point talking about that word.
That's super cool.
Basically, for those who don't know what I just referenced, there's this idea that like there are these mind-altering, form-changing drugs in Greek mythology that even the gods are afraid of, and that's why like Circe is so terrifying to the gods and witchcraft. And there's like a very interesting history of like witchcraft and foreign women specifically being very existentially threatening to the Greeks, which is why there are so many sorceress women who are out to get the men in mythology.
Pasiphae, Medea. Yeah.
And we love them for it. But they basically like represent this existential fear of like women having power, in my personal opinion. And this idea that they have these mystery drugs that will change you, like that is like I think tied to it. So I feel like that's like the same kind of fear that like is attached to Gale in this myth, in this story.
Plus farts.
Yeah, and the idea that she's got like these like she's in like the twisty insides, incontinent, like all of this stuff. I feel like it's meant to be like a physical reflection of like her, you know, being this like unnatural thing that like has these form shifting god whatever abilities. Like it just, to me, it checks out where I'm like, oh yeah, a man wrote this.
Yeah, because they also I think the same text. I mean, again, what did I do? Read like 4 articles that don't have sources necessarily cited, but she was not only cited as being like incontinent, whatever that means, but also being like lascivious and like very like sexual, which obviously is a classic. You're a woman and we're afraid of you.
Yes. Any woman empowered sexually in these kinds of patriarchal cultures is existentially terrifying also.
As well as any woman with powerful farts.
Yes.
Yeah. This chapter ends with Grover then grounding himself. We get the titular moment where he buries himself the way that I'm envisioning that like children do at the beach.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And he communes with all of the scrolls of New York, as well as all other non-human living beings, apparently. And also one rat.
And also one rat.
Only one. That to me is the craziest thing. New York City.
That was confusing.
Just
Why
one?
aren't there more rats?
No.
And the rat, he clarifies, is adopted. What are you trying to imply?
He's communing with all of the living creatures through the grounding process, but the only things that are like piling onto him so he can bury himself like a child at the beach is a bunch of squirrels plus one rat. Because
Who was adopted.
who was adopted? Eustace.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I laughed out loud. I thought that
I
was
know.
hilarious.
Yeah.
When he's like, he was adopted, and Percy is about to like say something, but he's like, just don't. Like, don't.
Just don't.
Percy, this
Let it
whole
go.
chapter has kept being like, Grover has a whole life that I don't understand. I'm not going to ask follow-up questions, which I don't know if that's the right strategy for him. Like, Percy, like, you need
I
to
don't
have some
know.
curiosity about what
Yeah.
Grover wants to do at the club. Percy, you need to ask a follow-up question.
Maybe this is
You
why
know,
Grover's feeling distant. I don't know. Maybe
I
Percy's
think they
gonna
are
be more.
It's
connected.
giving Otis and Eric in Sex Education, the final season. You need to be more actively curious.
How many ways
about-
are we going to find to say Grover is a gay boy in this book?
Well, Percy needs to find a way.
Percy
be
needs
curious.
to get in his Hedwig drag and
Yes.
make it to the birthday celebration.
Percy needs to also get in a wedding dress and go to the German club.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That would have fixed Grover's emotional problems in this book.
I would have to agree.
I will say, I don't remember who I told this to, but it was this book that made me realize Rick is never going to canonize a bi Percy Jackson, but he is canonizing a I'm comfortable with my sexuality Percy Jackson. That's my headcanon.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we're going to get cemented in this trilogy.
Yeah.
Okay. Grover does his communion, and we got several key pieces of information. Specifically, we're going to be making our way down Lafayette Street. We're going downtown because a polecat has been sighted, and there are apparently not that many polecats in New York.
Which means that there's at least one more polecat in New York other than Gale. I want to know the story. Why?
Probably has something to do with the canes.
Okay, you know what?
Ooh, I could see that. I could see that. There's probably more than one witch in the city.
Ooh. My exact phrasing was about to be, which hipster in Brooklyn owns a polecat as a
Oh,
pet?
yeah. We actually know girls in New York who have been personally victimized by dating boys in New York who have ferrets as
With
pets.
polecats.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to
Well, yes.
say who hired witches to curse the boys. I got so excited.
I'm sure that as well.
Well, we're off into chapter 18, which is I Smell Trouble, a New Fragrance for Men.
Trouble TM. Don't forget the
Let's
TM.
take a deep breath. Yeah, there's a TM that's trademarked. Girl, I guess wear whatever fragrances you want. We're moving into chapter 18, which begins with this very explosive, large physical reaction to Grover saying that there was a risk to the grounding and that he might have disappeared. Did anyone else find this weird? I found this very weird.
No, I think that this, if you take everything at the surface level, maybe this is weird, but this is the emotional buildup that Percy and Grover have been going through for the entire first part of this book. I'm surprised it happened here and not later, because this is like, this is the emotional crux that has been bothering Grover. This is the thing that I think Percy has kind of known but has been ignoring, and they can finally have this opportunity to talk about the fact that Grover is concerned that he is going to disappear from their lives when Percy and Annabeth go off to college, and that's why he is like subconsciously ruining everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of that's fair. This is a decision that, as you were saying, like this discussion is kind of like at the crux of the book. We need to have it at some point. It was interesting that it happened now. I was more like the ordering of the events was kind of puzzling to me, and I'm kind of afraid of this thing of where Percy like hears this and explodes several like a fire hydrant and like blows up a manhole cover because he can't control his anger at the idea that Grover is risking his life.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that there's some sort of conflict bubbling under that is going to explode in some way. I think absolutely correct. That is the structure of this book. He's like really mad though, and I feel like this is not a risk in the scheme of other risks that we go through all the time in these books. That is like there seems like an order of magnitude error unless you read this as exclusively being Percy like immediately like using this as an opportunity to I guess externalize all of this emotional turmoil and confusion he's been feeling in his relationship with Grover. That is mostly orthogonal to this actual magical event.
I think that the fact that he would be upset over Grover doing this does still fall in line with his fatal flaw, though. The idea that any of his friends would put themselves in danger, especially if he is also there. Like, I think what pisses him off is that he didn't know that there was this level of danger when Grover was doing this thing and he was standing right there. Because if Grover had disappeared while he had been there, he would never forgive himself. He would explode all of Manhattan.
He would not know what on earth happened. He would Grover would just go, boop, and it's like, wait, Grover Grover.
Yeah, and if Percy was unable to protect
Yeah.
his friends to save what matters most in the end, he would lose his mind.
Yeah.
This is true. This is all true. I was just like, this is a little, pardon me, this is a little mannish.
It's true. We're not at the German nightclub yet.
We're not at the
Yes,
German
we're very
nightclub.
much not at the German nightclub right now. Right now, we're at like a family Thanksgiving gone awry,
Arby's.
or like
We're at Arby's.
I would say it reminds me of, maybe I've just been reading way too much paranormal romance, but it reminds me of something.
Emily.
A sentence that
Perhaps.
This is a great
that
season for
level
that.
of reaction, right? You know, like that level of reaction is so giving, like, you know, hero finds out heroine has, I'm sorry, they're straight. I'm sorry. I'm just apologizing to the people of Seaweed Brain.
Oof.
What do you say about our listenership?
Point to one
I
straight
wouldn't say
person who
about
listens to this
myself.
podcast. Point to one straight person who listens to this podcast. I'll
Not
wait.
me. But basically, it's like this thing where like it'll often, it's like a trope almost of like the self-sacrificing like female character, like just willingly going through it, and then the guy finding out and being like, "What are you
like,
doing?" And like completely flipping out. And it felt very similar to that to me.
Yeah, there's an
Which is
undeniably mannish like protection and ownership that we could read into that.
I will say, because I just had this thought and it's processing through my brain, and I'm like, I want to put it out in the world. This is just like the platonic best friend version of Annabeth taking the knife on the Brooklyn Bridge and Percy going like, "No one touches her."
Yeah, it's very similar.
Annabeth, except he wasn't yelling at Annabeth. You know,
that's because he can't yell at a woman.
Oh, there we go.
That's the thing. It's like, I think this is cementing like Grover is existing in like a weird liminal gender space for us in this chapter that we will continue to explore between this and the dresses and the aggressive overuse of the word dude as a direct address in this chapter.
Literally, it's okay, man. Oh my god.
It's okay, bro. It's okay, dude.
It is giving
like
Otis and Eric, in fact, strongly.
Although I have to say, like, none of us would know. Is this how boys talk? I kind of think it might be.
I think this isn't how they talk to each other generically. I think this is specifically like I'm navigating an interesting gender situation and I'm trying to parameterize this. Like I'm like slotting this manually into a relational framework that I have. But like in so doing, I think like accentuating and exaggerating a lot of choices that they wouldn't necessarily make naturally.
Will the four straight men who listen to this podcast let us know if this is how men talk to each other in normal circumstances? Send us a message, let us know.
Podcast. Oh, and you
or
listen
alternatively,
to this podcast,
have you ever been clocked by like a queer friend for being like, okay, we got it. You don't have to say dude every 2 sentences for us to remember that we are two bros having a fun, chill.
I'm not gonna lie.
Far away from the nightclub.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't regularly interact with like cis men, so I completely forgot how to talk to men.
I'm trying to remember. My brother was on this college lacrosse team. That's the closest.
We should have talked about this before now. That's on me, man. I should have realized how hard this has been on you, man.
That's on me is, I think, this episode is getting a little dangerously Percy skeptical. I do feel like some of these things have been like mannish things that you say adjacent to accountability, but that are not accountability and that are not behavioral change. And one of the key examples of this is saying that's on me, as being like a bad thing happened and sort of immediately reaching out and internalizing all of the responsibility for that into yourself in a relationship with two people where neither of you have been communicating. I find that to be a choice that I was like, again, like this is not nothing is insurmountable here. Nothing is irredeemable. I was just like, oh, I don't think that's the right answer. And
all I'm hearing in my head,
continuing to dig into that and not leave it at that point.
All I'm hearing in my head is Pete Davidson as Chad going, oh, my bad.
I think they do.
That's correct.
I do think they dig into some stuff here. You know, like they do talk.
I like this
talking, man. As long as it's not the end of the conversation, is not insurmountable.
Also, I have to
get to another place, and they get to a further place.
The direct quote, allow me to clarify, is "That's on me." Period. I should have realized how hard this has been for you, man. That does follow, though. Grover, man, we never leave you. So it does come in.
It's a lot of them.
Yeah. I mean, well.
they're on their journey. I think that this is they're starting to communicate.
Yeah.
Grover is specifically naming this idea that he might be subconsciously sabotaging things because he's afraid of everybody leaving him.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good that he voiced that. I think this is a big step for everybody.
Yeah.
What I do like about this, even though I didn't expect this conversation to fall sort of in the middle of the book because I thought it was going to be an emotional journey for the whole book, I like that it falls here so that we can now see Percy and Grover having some time together to have a little adventure and to go on a little journey together and have that quality time that both of them have been craving.
Yeah. To watch them working through it as opposed to like talking around it for the whole book and then having it be a final confrontation type of situation. I agree. I agree.
And also getting that callback to like how it used to be before the Percy Jackson books with like the bullying and all of that stuff in their relationship, right? Because they mention it in this chapter, or maybe someone before.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to say before I guess we could move on to like the next section of this chapter is that as they're like finalizing and coming to closure on this, on talking about their feelings, Grover drags him a little. You know, where he's like, yeah, you should be worried about, you should be stressed about college a little bit. I've seen your GPA. And Percy's like, just shut up and come here. Give me a hug.
Yeah. This is good. This is beautiful. This is how you roast your closest friends in vulnerable moments.
I need to say, does GPA matter? Isn't Percy pretty much like, as long as he passes high school, he pretty much has a free ride to Camp Jupiter, to Rome University.
Yes.
This whole
Maybe there's an
time,
honors
I've
program?
never been clear on how selective this institution is.
I think he gets a free ride because he and 6 other people saved the world. So it's like, hey, that's your scholarship. You just need to pass college. You need to pass high school just to come here. That's it. That's all you need. And also, I guess 3 letters of recommendation.
Recruited athlete.
Recruited athlete. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Well, who do they play against is the question.
Good question.
The Demons of Tartarus.
That's funny. Okay, no, what I just came up with just now is there's an honors college. Annabeth's in the honors college, so they want to be in class together.
Like Annabeth is like cross-registered at Berkeley, which is quite selective, and Percy's not trying to do all that.
Yeah,
but if he wants to, take a couple classes with her,
Are we trying to insinuate that I guess Rome University is sort of giving Percy the community college treatment?
I think he's probably. I don't know. It sounds like he's getting a 4-year degree, but I guess we haven't heard anything one way or another about what he is trying to accomplish in college.
How many drachmas? Because I've been made aware again about like how much is a drachma worth. How many drachmas do you think a tuition at Rome University is?
Well, how much is a drachma to $1, you think? What's the conversion
That is
rate?
an interesting question that I'd love to answer that I have not heard a good answer for.
It's like this much gold. It's a lot of gold.
Owen from Through the Mist. Tunison. Oh yeah, well, that much gold? What is that?
That's 1 drachma.
Over $1,000?
Probably.
Maybe. So, but also in the 3rd book, Percy just casually drops a couple of drachmas for canoes that they borrow. So, hey, does the monetary system make 100% sense? No. Is it fun to joke about it? Yes.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of Owen from Through the Mist, I don't remember what chapter it is, but because capitalization, there is a capital through the mist.
The Mist,
written.
yes.
So,
it is.
Listen. It's just capitalization is the word through is the beginning of that sentence, but I'm headcanoning.
Yeah.
Owen is the first of us who got a shout out in a Percy book.
Yeah, I had to send Owen a photo of that page. Well, anyway, we're going to go, now that we've had this chit chat about separation anxiety and whatnot, we are going to go to Nolita just for the last part of the chapter, but I think we can end here on that note. Unless anyone had strong things to say about Nolita. I love Nolita.
What was funny is Oh, yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, it's funny because I finished this book and like a day later, I got a TikTok being like, explore the perfume section.
Wait, so it's real?
New York. And I was that was my first reaction where I was like, wait, oh.
I've been to Nolita and I have no memory of this. Percy hates Nolita, apparently. We go through a perfume section and we find a Nereid who is going to be the subject of the next chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't know Nolita was famous for perfume shops, but I do love Nolita. They used to have my favorite boba place in all of New York City in Nolita until it shut down during the pandemic.
You're
Shout out
talking
to
about
Barpaw.
Barpaw tea. We speak your name. We remember your excellence.
We remember you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Street Garden. It's a great place.
Yeah. I'm Team Nolita. Sorry, Percy. I'm not.
If they can't go to the German nightclub, they can at the very least. If they can't go to the German nightclub together, they can at the very least go to Nolita together. So it's good.
Or they can go to elsewhere. That was cool, but
they could go to elsewhere. Okay. Well, final thoughts from Emily or Robert? Thank you for joining us today.
That's a great question. Robert, you go first.
Question.
I don't have any final thoughts.
My final thoughts is that these these 3 chapters have a lot of emotional talk coming from Percy, and maybe Percy's not 100% the best at emotional situations or like emotional understanding, but he somehow BS'd his way through both conversations and came out with a positive outcome. So hey, he's doing something right.
Yeah.
I have my final thoughts there. I'm very interested to see how Grover gets to the place he's at in the burning maze when we see him again.
Yes.
In this next book.
Same. I have been thinking about that. How does he get over there? Literally. To the physical place he's in.
I should credit my co-host Phoebe for putting that in my brain. She said it first, but I've been thinking about it a lot.
Yes. There's a large there's a large chunk of Grover's journey that we don't know about. But maybe we'll find out about it in the next senior year adventures book a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, actually, is that a kind of a spoiler that we don't? Sorry, I've just realized I'm talking as though we finished the book, which...
It's okay. No, it's fine. I think everyone's finished it now.
I also want to point out, because there are some people who are trying to headcanon and be like, oh my god, the last god Percy has to help is Apollo. No! Apollo shows up in late December. Percy will have already had to send his college applications out by then, especially in New York City. So there's another god he has to help. Who is that other god? Good question.
I have a great guess.
I'm still hoping Hermes.
Guess?
I think it's gonna be oh god, what was her name?
Describe powers.
Keone?
No. That would be funny.
The
Keone Christmas book, I'm a fan of. Kim.
No,
it was Pompona, the goddess of the harvest and plenty. I was like, Thanksgiving book.
Oh,
you know what?
We had like a back to school book. We've got a Halloween book. Are we doing Thanksgiving? Or are we doing Christmas?
I don't see that.
Christmas would be like cutting it to the wire before January 1st application deadlines, but it could be either.
But also, we needed Rick loves a deadline.
Yeah,
it's true. Whom amongst us didn't finish their college applications at 11:59 to hit submit?
Big same.
If Percy doesn't do that, I don't think he has ADHD, actually.
Halloween is over in real life, but never in our hearts. I know that Robert was a demigod and Emily was a follower of Dionysus for Halloween. Carter was Dr. Doofenshmirtz. Apparently, I'm still awaiting proof. Thank you to Robert and to Emily for joining us today. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, all.
Bye. Bye.